Welcome to our Sense News show with the debate and discussion and detail behind the news items. A full panel of Doctor Who fans to delve into the Doctor Who news are with you today. We explore today Chris Chibnall and what he said in his writer's room interview with the Radio Times, his tenure as showrunner, his legacy, his lessons.
Carnage.
He was advertising his new Agatha Christie Netflix drama Seven Dials, hence the background. But we've transcribed it and we'll look at the key details and quotes from that. And yes, we will be touching on Torchwood too. He'd written some Torchwood before becoming the showrunner of Torchwood, of course. And that clip there is from Adrift, which he said in the interview was his favourite episode.
I'm sorry. It's a lie.
So let's get our panel on. Experts on Chris Chibnall and the whole era of Doctor Who. So I'll go across the pond. And good to see Christian. Hiya, Christian.
Howdy. Good to be here.
Well, of course, I love your lies. You're dying to talk about the Chris Chibnall era again, I know.
Well, this will be worth exploring.
Yeah. Oh, the diplomacy is high with you, great one. And this time, I'm not going across the pond. I'm going across, well, kind of the Pennines a bit. So over to see Jordan. Good to see Jordan.
Cheers, I'm back on.
Yeah, so Jordan's on. He might just keep us oldies in place regarding this Chibnall era. He may not. I don't know. Can't be that predictable. And to fulfill the quartet, so to speak, let's get it right here. He's much closer to where I am. It's Mark. Hiya, Mark.
Hello.
So here we go then. Here we go. The fun starts now.
Perry. Is this death?
Okay, first one is as a little taster for everybody, because it was quite a good interview, about 38 minutes. Do you have a clue that he was asked where you think the show, the Doctor Who, our great show, might be going? No, I don't. I didn't have any clue when I was watching it, which I actually quite liked, Christian, because I thought, actually, when I was watching the Reality War, I hadn't a clue what RTD was trying to do. And as he said here, the only thing I knew was that Jodie was in the episode. When I finished, I was very clear to Russell, I didn't want to know anything afterwards. So he got a surprise like us fans, that what the hell is going on? What is all this?
Well, you want to be able to enjoy a surprise when it's going to be presented to you. And, you know, he got the surprise. Whether he enjoyed his surprise or not, he did get his surprise along with everyone else.
Leave the girl. It's the man I want.
I know. I know they have a code with each other, don't they, Jordan? They don't insult each other. It's like an in-house thing, him, Moffat, and RTD. And RTD did say at that prom, I think, he said, he'll try and show respect for the Chibnall era. But he didn't have a clue what was going on. He still doesn't have a clue. He doesn't want to know. We do, don't we,
I
Jordan?
don't think any of us have a clue what's going on in the last couple of series.
I'm enjoying seeing streams out there saying, I've got a leak. David Tennant might be in the new series. Yeah, we know.
Paul McGann.
Yeah, Paul McGann, Joe, I don't know. They list everybody. You're going, yeah, we know. It's going to be a special with everybody who's got a heart and a pulse left on for a second. Susan will be, yeah, whatever. God, but still doesn't it? The more I hear about it, the more I'm not interested.
Now the news is in, and we learn of a Christmas special penned by Russell T Davies. What can we expect? More of the same messaging against Trump and Farage and anyone on the right, using Doctor Who as his own personal political platform. Will we be overwhelmed with more DEI and inclusivity agendas? Crazy storylines and character arcs? What classic monster or villain will he ambush and vandalize next? Stick with the Sense Sphere to experience the next stormy waters for Doctor Who. Let's see what he serves up next. Dog's bollocks, or more like a dog's breakfast. Whatever happens, the Who pets welcome you on board.
Are you jealous of Chris Chibnall in this situation, Mark?
The one thing I did pick up on is he was quite diplomatic insofar as he didn't say whether he liked or disliked the Billy Piper reveal. He just said, "Oh, that was a complete surprise to me," but he didn't say his opinion on that one way or the other. So I don't think he was drawn into what he might personally believe.
Yeah, and while I've been joking tonight, everybody who's watching, I'll be honest with you. Chris Chibnall, I think, came across as a decent bloke in the interview. I haven't heard much from him, and there's other quotes I'll show tonight where I actually have a lot of respect for him because he said, "I've done my bit and I don't want to come back." That was hence my thumbnail. I've got no unfinished business. I'm not coming back, and I'm thinking that's quite healthy. That's really healthy. He wants to keep moving forward. Oh, if only some other people had the same idea, Jordan, eh?
To be fair, from what I can remember, he didn't even want the job. They basically nagged him into doing it because they just didn't have any other option at the time. But as far as I can remember, he didn't even want the showrunner.
This is what shocks me, Mark and Christy and Jordan, is there's a quote at the beginning where it says Julie Gardner approached him and said, "Do you want a cup of tea?" and had a glint in her eye and said, basically, "Do you want the Torchwood gig?" And you think, look, I know the media lovies sometimes do this, where basically it's nudge, nudge, wink, wink. No interview, no pitch, no hard work done at all. They actually give you the gig when you haven't prepared anything. But for 2024, 25, 26, with a Disney budget, I think that is out of order. But I am getting concerned that they might be doing a bit of that again. But yeah, it as you say, Jordan, he didn't maybe even want the gig, but it was the baton was passed to him because they don't, Christian, it seems to me they don't want to pass it to anyone out of their club because they want to all protect each other.
That's a big part of it. Basically, if there is a tone or a mythos or a direction you want the franchise to move in, you only want to pass it off to like-minded individuals, generally speaking, because then you're confident that they'll go in a direction that's at least tangentially connected to the vision you personally have. So when RTD passed it off to Moffat, and then when Moffat passed it on to Chris Chibnall, it makes sense that it's an in-house inheritance. The problem is what goes wrong with pure in-house inheritances when the person in-house is not qualified for the job. It doesn't work. And I'm just going to bring in something historical. For a while in the Roman Empire, the Julio-Claudian dynasty passed it, quote, in the family, and that wasn't going well for about 6 emperors. And then they realized they had to go outside the family, and you had 100 years of the 5 good emperors who were all, quote, adopted into the lineage, but weren't actually a part of the family. And that brought a fresh infusion of energy in, and it worked. In terms of a property like this, they needed to look on the outside to get some healthy, fresh insights on where to take the franchise next.
Right then, troops. No, not troops. Team. Gang. Fam?
I mean, I have a healthy respect for one head teacher who appointed me, not because she appointed me, but because she had all the staff had the head of maths as the favourite to get the senior role. And I was from another part of the country, and you had loads of interviews to get to the stage of even getting to a proper interview. Anyway, obviously I got it, and she told me later, you know, that she had a lot of heat on her because people were saying, "You didn't give it to," oh my God, because they were all expecting it to be kept in-house. And she said, "I want fresh blood. I want fresh ideas." And, you know, that should happen in every profession. If she'd given it to the head of maths, he got it on merit. The point was, she said, "Oh, dear me, the best in our in-house, Brendan's beaten, so we give it to Brendan." And in the end, surely that's what Bad Wolf should be doing, Mark.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're making me remember when I first started out in my career. I was working for ITV Granada at the time, and back then there was an independent drama company called Red Productions, which was based in the Granada Studios area, and it was at the time where Russell T Davies had already done Queer as Folk by that time, and that sort of catapulted a string of dramas to come out of Red Productions at the time. And I do remember it was very much one Russell T Davies after the other. It was Second Coming. It was was it Cucumber? Was another one?
Bob and Rose.
Yeah, there was a string of them, and I do remember it was very much. We just want to keep it in this little bubble. We like what's being produced, and we want more of it. There wasn't that. There wasn't that foresight to then look out at other people who may be just as talented and doing things that were a little bit just as cutting edge. They just wanted more of the same. So, it's interesting with what Chris Chibnall said in that interview, because he mentions how he got some guidance from Stephen Moffat, and he'd sort of observed Russell T Davies' era, and there was a lot of he was talking about how do I run the ship. He wasn't at that point thinking more about what do I write. It was more about how do I steer the ship. So whether he was feeling a bit overwhelmed at being handed this baton, I don't know.
You came back of your own accord?
Doctor?
No. It seems that I'm some kind of a galactic yo-yo.
Well, what I'm going to do, everybody, as we move on, don't worry, Jordan, here, this is where we really will need you, because I'm going to test the credentials of our panel on whether they really should be here talking about the Chibnall era. So are you ready, lads? Fingers on the buzzers. Fingers on the buzzers. I'm going to be really... Right, so here we go then. Should we be doing this? Name that villain. Yeah, he was the dentist, I think. He was...
Tim Shaw, wasn't it? The joke.
Oh, God, yeah.
Tim Shaw.
That's it. So don't worry. We'll zoom through these. But yes, he's the toothy dentist one. Yeah. That was how Jodie started the era, wasn't it? Right. Okay. We're looking. Okay. What about this one? Name the villain. It's not Goldfinger or Bluefinger. It's.
This is amazing. I should remember these, but I only watched the Chibnall stories one time each. I never revisited them.
Yes, I can count the times I've watched it on one finger. Oh, I see one. The
fingerless ones.
Yes, the fingerless ones, limbs. We had somebody driving us to fruit picking in Australia when I was there, and he had no fingers on one hand, and bless him, everybody called him Fingers. It's sad, isn't it? So he said it was just... I know. So, of course, name the villain. Liberace? No.
Alexis Colby.
Yeah, no, this is not Dynasty, everybody. Sorry. Don't.
Oh my God. This is embarrassing.
It's gone out of my head as well. I try and remember important things. Mr. Bling and Mrs. Bling, I think.
That must be it.
Yeah, that must be it. This is not Victoria Wood, everybody. What's the story?
Oh, God.
Orphan 55.
One of the worst stories of all time.
Oh.
No, it was a documentary on hamsters or guinea pigs or something. I don't know. Dodgy haircuts was part of this story.
Bungle.
Yeah. What's the story?
Ghost Monument.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know what, Mark? It early on, because we were all really focusing, weren't we? Thinking, how's this era going to land? And she didn't even have the TARDIS at this point.
My beautiful ghost monument. You've redecorated. I really like it. This is my TARDIS.
I remember really, really closely watching the Ghost Monument and thinking, when does it start? When does she get the keys to the TARDIS?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right, yeah. But he had a big gun. That was nice.
Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror.
Terror, yeah.
Yeah, you were fast on that one. How many times
did you get one? Trying to get one.
I will not watch that one again, I don't think, Jordan, because it bored me.
It was one of the only decent ones I thought, to be honest.
Really? Go on.
I like the villain. Good music and a good villain. That's probably how I can give it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I just struggled with this era. I really did. I tried my best. So there you go. Shall we stay or shall we go? So anyway, just as a reminder for those of you who have tried to dismiss it at the back of your head, this is me just trying to recollect certain things. The story in the cabin when, as you know, we ended up on this fantasy adventure and in the end you found a frog on a bloody stool. That was a moment that I think challenged my Doctor Who loyalty to the nth degree, that one. I just want to just remind everybody of that. Of course, a lot of people say, but you got the fugitive Doctor, you got the Jadoon back. You got that great new, I say new TARDIS, classic TARDIS.
You're probably a bit confused right now. Hello, I'm the Doctor.
I don't know, where does everybody stand on this story? Because it was a story I didn't need. It was a Doctor I didn't want. It's nothing against Joe Martin at all. It's just we were still establishing Jodie and trying to work out her characterization and. She had a cluttered TARDIS crew, and then another blooming Doctor appears, and not long after that, we've got Timeless Children. So I don't know. I was troubled by this, and just to remind everybody before I come to the panel, but then we had Dynasty episodes in flux. I don't know. I just think this whole era, to me, I found very bouncy. It was very difficult. Where do you stand on it, Mark?
I mean, you're talking about the Fugitive Doctor episode. I enjoyed that one, and I enjoyed it because there was a lot of unexpected things that did happen. I think what has come since then is, we need to explain it. We need to absolutely fit this Doctor in the Doctor's pantheon of timelines.
I told you, love, I'm the Doctor.
You can't be.
Yeah, why that?
Because I'm the Doctor.
You have got to be kidding me. All rainbows and trousers that don't reach.
What?
I've seen a lot of people sort of definitively putting the Fugitive Doctor before the first Doctor, and that just doesn't that just doesn't work for me in my head, and I don't like that definitive. It has to be this. I like the fact that, fair enough, you introduce a mysterious Doctor, but keep it open-ended. Keep it in for the viewer to mind up where that sits in their storyline of Doctor Who, rather than definitively say to us, "Oh, it has to be this."
I mean, Christian, and I'll come to Jordan, and then we'll bounce into the quotes. But just before we get into all the quotes from Chris Chibnall. Just looking at the whole Chris Chibnall era, I can't get over the frog on the stool. I can't get over various things. I can see some of the highs, like the lone Cyberman and all that stuff. But which ones do you pick out when you kind of sum up this era?
Well, most of the time when you pick up the ones that summarize the era, people are going to go back to a handful of narratives. Arachnids in the UK because it was almost an embarrassment. Rosa, because everyone was discussing the social justice implications in Rosa. But they're also going to go back to the Timeless Child because that seemed to break canon. They're going to go back to Flux because that created a universe that was never resolved before the series moved on. So you've got a handful of these that pop up cyclically again and again. One of the big problems, of course, was the Fugitive Doctor. And one of the problems in casting Jo Martin is that as an actress, she overshadowed Jodie Whittaker. So that's one of the reasons it's easy for viewers to kind of want more of her, but at the same time, because her placement fractures the timeline, that then makes me say they do need to explain it. And the only way to explain it, if she doesn't fit the timeline, is to say this is an alternate variant or an alternate universe version of the Doctor, in which case the timeline becomes immaterial and you don't have to play in that universe. But it's never explained. And maybe that's one of the hallmarks of problems with Chibnall's run. If it had been successful and he'd done the stories that he wanted to, and he brought things to kind of a conclusion, there would have been a chance to close up all these open threads. He never did that. But I don't think when he was producing it, he knew where he was really going with it. It felt like he was flying by the seat of his pants, and everything was kind of off the cuff, and it just wasn't well thought out. And maybe that's the baseline problem.
I know what I've done. I know my own life.
One of us has to be wrong. I'd quite like it if you got off my ship now.
But in this Radio Times article interview, he does say that he had a plan. He sounds like Blackadder. He has a cunning plan. I mean, Jordan, I'm trying to get balance before we really get going. I mean, the Legend of the Sea Devils. You know me, I'm mad on Sea Devils, and I hated that story. I hated what they did to the Sea Devils, but obviously their mask was much more closer to the original. Their costume, I actually very recently in Hexham at Neil Cole's exhibition talked to the award-winning, Hollywood blooming costume designer, and he went into so much detail about wanting to get it back to the original Sea Devils. I had a growing respect, even for touches of the Chibnall era.
The Chibnall era did seem to want to go back to some of the original echoes. It really did.
Yeah, I'm sure
so
they did, yeah.
Could you honestly please take us through a few of your decisions? You were telling me about how you sourced the material for the Sea Devil and what you were trying to do.
Well, again, the design comes from Ray, the costume designer. I suggested, because I'd been working on another project that had some amazing fish skin leather, I thought that would be fun to use, and cleared that with Ray, and we got that ordered and dyed it. Ray's team worked on the breeches and on the quilted jackets. We did all the leather armour bits. And the decision was made that they should be pretty faithful to the original 70s ones, which, like yourself, I remember seeing and being quite impressed by. So it was really a case of trying to recreate the look that John Friedlander had very successfully created and built in the 70s.
And when you looked, I'm sure you looked at the Rories of the Deep, where they did an echo of a different culture, didn't they? Which is this seemed to be doing as well. Did you look at how that practically? Because obviously, just viewing that practically looked a bit awkward. The helmets didn't seem to fit the costume. Yeah. So I suppose you case all that on how it works now.
Yeah, and we have to kind of figure out the practical considerations and things like the fact that these are going to be appearing with Jodie, who is not the same height that John Pertwee was. So you have to make allowances for that and bring the height of the Sea Devils down a little bit from what they might have been. If we'd had someone who was 6'2", we would have configured them slightly differently.
Yeah.
The idea of Ashad is he's a kind of collage of all the different Cybermen you've seen in the past. So certain elements of that, all based on Ray's design, I then kind of tried to make as authentic to the previous ones as possible. And we had access to some of the moulds that Millennium had used previously, so we were able to incorporate elements of the Cybermen that they'd done, as well as trying to emulate the earlier ones, going right back to the very first ones, really.
Where do you stand, Jordan, on any highs or lows or standouts of the Chibnall era?
Well, the low's always going to be Timeless Child. That's the worst thing that's ever been done in the show for me, out of every era. Highs, it's fair what you were just saying with the costumes. You did the same with the Sontarans as well in Flux, to be fair. He did use the original 70s design. The only real high for me was probably Power of the Doctor. I think it's just because he got Sophie Aldred and Sylvester McCoy back on screen.
Yeah. And I'll add to that Peter Davison with Tegan. I mean, you nearly served it on a plate for me, because Tegan was such a mouthy devil in the 80s that to make her fall down a lift shaft, I thought brilliant. But she got up, she survived it. How the hell how did that happen? So okay, so we'll start to hit. What did Chris Chibnall say? Obviously, that was one of the big ones. I've no unfinished business with Doctor Who. And I'm not being sarcastic. I think he's done his bit and he's moved on. And I think that's big of him, to be quite honest. But, and just to kind of remind everybody of his full era, this was season 11. And you can just for everybody to reappraise where they stand on this one. I've seen many surveys saying this was the worst season. Started strongly, some would argue, the woman who fell to earth, the ghost monument, Rosa, and then it started to fall off. The Battle of Ransker Avkolos, I mean, who cares? The Battle of Doobie-Doo. He said he'd only done one draft. He does actually acknowledge that. But then Resolution, we hit those Dalek trilogy. Remember, that was, some people see them as strong beasts. There's the toothy one. Spyfall, Orphan 55, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, the Jadoon, Can You Hear Me? Now, The Haunting of Villa Diarty, Diodati, or whatever, I mean, or Dotty, The Ascension of the Cybermen, Timeless Children, and then you got Revolution of the Daleks. So, again, and then just to remind everybody, when we hit Flux, you had the Halloween Apocalypse, the Sontarans, Once Upon a Time, Village of the Angels, Survivors, the Vanquishers, another Daleks one, then the blooming Sea Devils, and the Power. I just think it was such a kind of patchwork of an era, it felt like to me. And of course, I think some of us really struggled to try and get past that teenager, Chris Chibnall, because he so eviscerated Pip and Jane Baker live on air. And I just still found that so disrespectful. He has said he felt, I do think he's pulled back from that position. Mark, have you seen, he has said that, hasn't he? He's kind of pulled back almost out of embarrassment, I think.
Yeah, and maybe that's because of the sickly coloured tie there, maybe he's pulled back on that. I mean, to be honest with you, I think he came into this, as was said in the interview, he came into this knowing fine well that he was going to cast the Doctor as a woman for the very first time. He had that on his tick box list of things that he wanted to do. If you're going to do something as fundamental as that for the very first time to the main character, then I think that first series, you need to be reminding people who have been invested in the show for a long time, this is the same character, this is the same universe, it's everything that you need and want. And I think, unfortunately, like you mentioned, that first series, that there wasn't, beyond the Doctor and the TARDIS, there wasn't a great deal of familiarity there for us to get on board and say, yes, we're with you, we're on this journey with you. You had that very flat as a pancake finale, followed by the New Year special, which had the Daleks in, but it looked like somebody had just gone into the shed and knocked up a couple of pieces of plywood and said, here, have a Dalek. So you kind of felt shortchanged really by the end of that first series. And I suppose it was hard to get yourself invested in after that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a steel industry, do we anymore? But the Daleks managed to find some spare steel. Stunning, that. I felt as though when we saw those first Chibnall Daleks, it was like Button Moon remake. I really did think, what the hell's going on?
Everyone sees and knows too much.
So, Jordan, okay. I'm not going to wade into the female-male Doctor debate tonight. We've all had the debates before. But what I will say is, if you're going to do it, I think I was disappointed in season 11 that Chris Chibnall didn't really set the scene for that. In other words, it just basically, he just cast a female. He didn't really narratively set it up. He didn't set it up in any other way. I didn't really feel there was much of an explanation, which I think it needed. The other thing, Jordan, is if you're going to have your first female Doctor, and this is a big moment in Doctor Who, clearly, why then litter the TARDIS with 3 other characters? I think this is a moment, Jordan, I thought we could have done a Deadly Assassin and established the Doctor, the female Doctor, and give her a chance. What do you think?
The thing is, I don't think Jodie Whittaker quite had the on-screen presence to stand out in that group. So I feel like she just sort of gets lost in this group of 4 and she doesn't really feel above them.
And maybe that's why maybe I'm thinking she needed a bit of time to herself.
Yeah, like a solo adventure.
Yeah, challenge her. Throw her off cliffs, do all that sort of stuff. And then one by one, she recruits her fam. A
Yeah.
phrase I don't want to hear ever again, but there you go.
Right then, troops. No, not troops. Team. Gang. Fam?
It doesn't help that it was just a really drab, boring series.
It was. I know they played with the tonal quality, they photographically changed it and everything. They did an awful lot of things. I mean, production wise, I don't think there was a problem as usual. It just looked duller. It just didn't work. I mean, Christian, what do you reckon about? I think this was the moment to do a kind of single solo Doctor story, establish her, give her a blooming chance, and do a Deadly Assassin too.
That would have been a very effective introduction to the character if they had thought about going in that direction. But that was one of the reasons I think that Chris Chibnall, given his skill set, was the wrong person to act as showrunner, because his vision was not well established, not well thought out to start. If I recall correctly, he was discouraging Jodie Whittaker from really educating herself on the franchise by looking at historical iterations of the Doctor. And there was not a discussion of the type of persona she was going to project. So that was a huge red flag. But going into that narratively, you probably would want at least 2 standalone stories where she's on her own. And then by the 3rd story in, she's introduced to a small group of individuals. Someone passes away, someone dies during the adventure, someone then is recruited. Okay, that's her first companion. And then you go 1 story further in before the next companion shows up. Lest anyone forget, there is a problem with a crowded TARDIS. Does anyone remember the phrase for Peter Davison's era, the crowded TARDIS? Part of the problem was you had to find narrative functions for all the accompanying companions with the Doctor. So you don't want it too crowded. So basically having 3 companions was probably too much.
And this is where, I mean, it's a good point, well made, that you see people say, hey, all Chibnall did is go back to 63. You had 3 companions, but hold on a minute. You also had 7-part stories. You were able to lose a companion down a lift shaft for half an episode because, there were 7, 6, long episodes. Of course, now with a 45-minute wham bam thank you ma'am, you can't have 3 people going hi it's over. You can't. What's the point? So all the clever dicks who go, oh no, we're going back to 63. Yes, cluttered TARDIS. Yeah, and now we also had a very complex plot as well. Now when we have simplistic plot where we land somewhere, oh my god, there's a problem. Do you know what? I think I've just discovered if I press that button, it resolves it. But in the meantime, we got to know each other. That's basically an episode nowadays. Hated it. So yes, that has been, I think, a problem with the TARDIS crew. So let's get to it. Let's see what he said. And to be honest, I will say, I think he's talked a lot of sense here. He said, you're building on, you're Doctor Who showrunner, you're building on sort of laying a fire almost. You're sort of building, you're putting your sticks on top of the sticks that are already there. See, he has the secret of fire. Is he better than Carr in Unearthly Child? He's up there. The old woman would love him. And you're very conscious of doing that. I'm very conscious of, I'm making a reference back to the Deadly Assassin or the Brain of Morbius or something like that. But when somebody does it to you, it's like, oh, that's a real surprise and a delight. And of course, he's saying about having Jodie Whittaker in the Reality War and the callback, and it's an honour and all the rest of it. It's nice that your era's remembered. But the first bit, of course, Mark, he's talking about you're building, your Doctor Who show is building on another era and another era. And I thought, well, that sounds respectful to me, because I got the idea from you who in some places more to do with RTD2, that it's a proprietorial kind of ownership of all eras that they will change, like Sutek, Omega, blah, blah, blah. What do you reckon, Mark?
Well, first thing I would say is put that stone down if you're going to whack him over the head with a stone if he's trying to build fire. To be honest with you, when he's talking about the callback of the use of the 13th Doctor in the current iteration in the Disney Plus era, the Ncuti Gatwa era. Do you know what the thing that stood out for me there was? Forget the writing and what we think of Chris Chibnall's era. I will say that I think Jodie Whittaker got the Doctor more so than Ncuti Gatwa did. In that one single scene that they had together, there was just the sense that she owned an idea of what the Doctor is, much more savvy to it than Ncuti Gatwa was. Ncuti Gatwa was this emotional character. Was the Doctor ever this, wear my heart on my sleeve kind of character? No, he wasn't. Did he change his costume every other episode? No, he didn't. I think it was quite striking that I think Jodie Whittaker got that much more. Just in that single scene where she returned, I just felt there was a sense of really what the Doctor is. And I just didn't get that from the Ncuti Gatwa era, unfortunately. So yeah, I think there was. I think it taking that into consideration, I think Chris Chibnall did have, like you say, had some respect for what had come before. Whether we liked all of it or not is, we can all have our opinions on that. But you mentioned things like the Sea Devils, you mentioned the Sontarans in Flux. I think there was a sense of trying to remain faithful to really callbacks to the classic era. Look at Joe Martin's TARDIS. There was a sense of love for what we identify, really identifiable things from Doctor Who lore, Doctor Who history that were woven in there.
Interesting things. One about the Sontaran costume, and how you source that and how you design that. Could you take me through that, please?
Yeah, well, it all comes from the costume designer, Ray Holman. He kind of comes up with the idea and the concept, and we knew we wanted to go for a kind of grittier look, and we referenced things like cast iron and rust, and just trying to make them a bit more gritty and realistic and go away from the kind of gloss blue palette that we'd had before. And so my team and I came up with a digital print for the fabric that was printed onto a canvas, and then all of the armour elements were 3D modelled by one of my team, Stuart Curran, and we ended up with hopefully costumes that looked a bit more at home on a battlefield.
Yeah. I think this is why I think it's important in this Chris Chibnall debate, whether we like the era or not. I will really agree with you there, Mark, because I really do think it's true that when he was making callbacks to earlier eras of Doctor Who, he tried to be accurate, and he tried, apart from flying sea devils. I'm not giving a fuck, but even the Timeless Children, it's controversial, but Timeless Children was trying to build upon, he thinks, a moment in the brain of Morbius, if you get my gist. Mm-hmm. I wished he hadn't gone there, but he thought he was building a fire on some spark that had already started in the Hinchcliffe era. Right, there's a discussion. But I think there was more respect, therefore, than RTD2. What do you reckon, Christian?
Yeah, I would say he was trying to show that respect when he would make those attempts. That's not to say that his attempts always landed. Obviously, they didn't. There's a lot of consternation from fandom about how well his ideas were executed. But there is a contrast between Chris Chibnall and RTD. RTD doesn't seem to have that level of respect. As you pointed out, he feels like he has proprietary ownership. He's not a steward. Dare I say it, he is the god of the current Doctor Who universe, and therein his decrees will land with no debate, no argument.
No.
What he says goes. I don't think Chibnall was cut quite from that cloth.
No.
So it's unfortunate that he wasn't a better science fiction writer, but that wasn't his strength. That wasn't his natural wheelhouse.
One passes continually through the same points in time.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Right! TARDIS is a separating
Yeah. Do you feel like that when you watch it back, Jordan, that he was building on an earlier era? He wasn't changing it. He wasn't trying to wreck it. He wasn't trying to own it. He was just trying to build on what had gone before.
Personally, I don't know. I'm not. You're probably not going to struggle to say anything positive about The Timeless Child. I personally think it was a reaction to Series 11. I think everyone sort of complained in Series 11 that nothing happened. I think he's just gone the other way. Right, well, I'll show you then. I'll put a new backstory in.
Yeah, I'd love to know what the seeds of that were, but I just wish
to point this out, I think mentioning The Timeless Child, and this has been brought up before, it wasn't a good origin story for the Doctor. However, if he had taken the tangent and they discovered that this was actually a backstory for the Master, it's actually something that narratively may have functioned well, both with the characterization of the Master as well as with the history of the series. So you can have a great idea, but how you choose to execute it, and he chose to make the Doctor the Timeless Child and be a make or break kind of narrative.
The Timeless Child.
And in an era where, I mean, you who's obsessed with arcs, I didn't think he really teed us up for this Timeless Children shock.
Mm-mm.
He will say, yes, there was a moment in Spyfall, there was a moment here. No, you didn't set up for the chaos that was coming. And I think that was also a mistake, because even when we got to the Timeless Children, there was so much exposition being thrown at me. I was getting diagrams. I thought it was a sex education lesson. It was like, what the hell's going on here? I've run out of time to make this an exciting plot. So here's some pictures. I thought, really? I mean, honestly, I did think that was a bit. So here we go. I don't feel like I have any unfinished business, and I'm not that bothered about going back, he said. I haven't really done it on anything else I like. That's going back. There's so many new things to do and so many opportunities. I'm interested in things I haven't done and trying out new things. It's why I wrote a novel this year. So it's like I thought I want to try that. All credit to you. You're trying to, if it's not your wheelhouse, you're trying something else. You've done Broadchurch, you've done plays, you've done books, you've done this Netflix series. You're moving on. And I think he is probably better at that genre. So actually, yeah, I'm not going to fall into sarcasm here going, hallelujah, he's not coming back. I'm just going, well done. He knows what he did with Doctor Who. Maybe he wanted a bit longer, but he's done it. It's a bit like Peter Capaldi. I've done it. I was pushed out. I'm not coming back. You got me. You've used me up. And if you've wasted your time with me, tough titty. Basically, I get that impression. I mean, Mark, I will applaud this bit because I'm going to criticize him in a moment, but I applaud this.
I think we also have to remember Chris Chibnall had quite a challenge towards the end of his era because he was unfortunately in the middle of the height of COVID and lockdown, and there wasn't a series coming off the back of that. He had to hold his horses and probably had a whole different story plot arc in mind for what was coming next, but for the fact that we were all in lockdown and production got shut down. So I think in a way, I think we have to commend Chris Chibnall for seeing that through. With Flux, that was obviously the workaround to get around production and how it all came together.
But Mark, I'm butting in because I'm going to ask you to expand in a different way. I'm hearing what you're saying. You know, the whole idea of Flux, and it was locked down, and he had probably bigger plans. I'm sure he did, a more ambitious plan, and he had to foreshorten it into a 6-part series to save the series, so to speak. But Mark, the credit we've given him, but I would have given him more credit, I'll be honest with you, if he didn't then just... Because Flux ended up being an absolute rush job of space opera rather than pull back. You had ambition. We can't deliver it in this climate we're in. So if you've only got 6 episodes, surely a good experienced writer and showrunner would have pared it back and made it much more focused on one aspect or another. I mean, War of the Sontarans over 3 episodes and then doing the Weeping Angels one. You know what I mean? I don't know why we were going everywhere. I mean, could you keep up? I just thought it's too much.
I think it almost seemed like a Doctor Who sampler in a way. It was like, this is, what a Sontaran story could look like if we had 4 episodes. This is what a Weeping Angel could look like if we had 4 episodes. It was like cherry picking things, which, it's that classic thing that we have now, is cramming too much into singular episodes. And I mean, you talk about relationships with characters. There was a bit in one of the last episodes. Hi, Kate Lethbridge. I haven't seen you in a while, and that took about 10 seconds worth of dialogue, and that was as much of an exchange that those two characters had. But to be fair, I was appreciative of the fact that they attempted it and they did it, given I can only imagine will have been challenging production conditions because of the restrictions. But to be honest, it ended well with Power of the Doctor. I think, if you equating that as part of the series, I think that was quite a good an enjoyable one to end on.
You see, all children leave home sooner or later. Joy is to watch them fly. Oh, we're more than good. We're ace.
You see, even with the flux, and I'm trying to think, if you pared back and everything, Christian, they still did moments. I don't know quite why we focused on Mary Seacole rather than Florence Nightingale. I'll just park that there for a moment because one's more controversial than the other one. The other thing is, I was not happy that the Sontarans, I mean, Robert Holmes' invention, Sontarans, military species, they know what they're doing. They're very efficient as one, as John Pertwee discovered. But suddenly, Christian, you can whack them on the back of the head with a wok. They're like chocolate. I mean, and also they do a shift system in their spaceships where basically they clock off. And that's when you can all sneak in and do anything to their spaceships. They're not very clever, these military Sontarans, are they?
Well, when he's trying to add elements into the narrative that unfortunately don't work because he's trying to forward the plot. And the issue is he's not looking at the big picture and what we would need to help our suspension of disbelief. If it's a warrior species, you expect them to be a lot more canny than that. And obviously there's a huge gap in their skill set if that's the case. But I don't think he and his team knew quite how to plant narrative seeds and have them pay off later. If we remember the Stolen Earth, we're talking about planets disappearing hither, thither, and yon, and it comes together in the finale, and the seeds were kind of planted at several places along the way. And it's like you needed to have these seeds planted either to avoid heavy exposition for the timeless child or to lead up to an effective finale in the flux. You've got to make sure those seeds are planted in a meaningful way. And it actually saves the audience from boatloads of either heavy exposition, which bogs down a story, or mischaracterizations of characters or villains when you can't risk having those problems in the story overall. He needed a story doctor to help him in this genre.
Yeah. Classic script editor. I mean, Jordan, if I add to this bit as we go through, he also then said, and I've had such a good run on Doctor Who and done so many different things, it also feels, it's somebody else's turn. You have to that's a very precious seat you've got in which you're sitting in, and you want to go, who's the next person and what they're going to do and what are they going to do that's new. So no, I don't ever want to go back. I don't ever think about that. And it's that first line to me, Jordan. I'm thinking, I've had a good run on Doctor Who and it's somebody else's turn. And I just think if RTD, it is a shame that he's ruined his legacy because RTD didn't think like that second sentence and go, no, it's somebody else's turn now. I've done my bit. Very like Chris Chibnall. If Chris Chibnall came back, we'd just get more of the same. We know we would. RTD, we got more of the same of his favourite bits. If Moffat came back, it will be the same. I mean, Jordan, I'm just so glad he's not wanting to come back, and that's not me being sarky. I just wish RTD had followed that actual trend.
We're coming back subtler than ever. Thinking. It's like breathing. Of course I think of Doctor Who stories all the time. And the BBC had decided to set up a whole great big new future with it. There are rules. There are things you can do. There are things you can't do. Pushing against those rules is part of the job as well. But I was really keen to kind of make sure it didn't just get thrown to the lions. I tell you, actually, it is the same old Doctor Who. It's still daft. It's still got jokes. It really is the same old show. I hope a brand new audience comes in to watch it. But
Yeah, I think they just run out of ideas after a while, creative juices. I think Chibnall, to be fair, he's actually a good writer. Look at Broadchurch, Life on Mars, Torchwood. Personally, though, I don't think he's ever written a good story of Doctor Who.
If you want it, kablam it.
What do you think? Still me?
Write everybody on a postcard if you think he has. Some argue about the haunting of Villa DRT.
He's never written a great one, should I say. He's done maybe good, but not great.
Yeah. That element, the lone Cyberman, I think a lot of people loved that idea, didn't they? That seemed to get traction, it felt like. But yeah, I mean, so yes, he doesn't think you need to obviously own Doctor Who. It's part of his life and he's moved on. So I really actually didn't want to know that Jodie was going to regenerate into David Tennant, but they were like, you have to know this because you're the executive on the episode. I didn't know, and I love not knowing. I love being back as a viewer again. That's really cool. So just to kind of wrap up this before we hit some real controversy, he said, I never ask and I never want to know, but I want to watch it because that's the thing. It's what takes you back. Like when you were a 5-year-old. You're there watching Doctor Who, and to be back in that position, having had your own TARDIS in inverted comments, it says there, that's the transcription, commas. I didn't have a real yearning to, but it's lovely to then go back and go, what's happening now, you know? So yeah, he's moved on. He's happily moved on. But I still get that impression that it's a club and it's everybody's Buggins' turn and all the rest of it. There they all are. As some people call them, Christian, it's the Fitzroy Tavern mob, you know? And who's the next one? Who's the next one who might be part of that Fitzroy Tavern Club, Christian?
Are we talking McTighe?
We are talking McTighe, yes. I mean, that's what I think, because having known how they all set up, you know, Julie Gardner giving, you know, Chris Chibnall, can we meet for a cup of tea, and then giving him the Torchwood gig, I do worry that, you know, they're going to go down that road, that rabbit, you know, that, I don't know. It worries me sick. It really does. That.
I'd say, Brendan, it should worry you because that's the pattern. It's been 20 years, and they've been very, very consistent. They show no signs that they are disinclined to follow the Fitzroy Tavern and look outside for other creative voices. And as we've pointed out, for an established producer, showrunner, story writer to come back years after the fact doesn't always work. Gene Roddenberry came back with The Next Generation, but the first season or so was not being well received. He was kind of in the way, and he had to be shunted aside so Rick Berman could take the series and the franchise forward. And that's what allowed it to succeed. When Lucas came back with the prequel trilogy, not to slam it, but it wasn't as well received as the original Star Wars trilogy. So it may have been that he needed an influx of fresh insight to help make sure that the stories were what people needed or wanted to see. When RTD came back, obviously he went down exactly the wrong avenue for Doctor Who for any number of political reasons. So I can commend Chris Chibnall for saying, I'm done, I'm not coming back. The only thing that I might challenge him on was the idea that he had a successful run, because the run was manifestly unsuccessful. And I would theorize that it's more credible for a creator to come back if what they did was well received previously. Roddenberry was a god for Star Trek, so when he came back and was involved at the start of Next Generation, it was logical. When Lucas came back with his prequels back in 1999, it made sense. When RTD came back, everyone was thinking, okay, he's going to fix the problem. It didn't quite pan out. Chibnall didn't have as well received a run as he may want to believe.
Well, it's interesting because as we go into, I mean, it's an interesting interview and we're going to hit on what he said about his era of Doctor Who. But just as the final touch before that, he talked about his time on Torchwood, because obviously you learn lessons as you go. This was his first time as a showrunner. And so if we look at what he said there, he was basically saying this. What the show would be like. I don't think anybody knew what the show would be like regarding Torchwood or what it would feel like. We had Russell's pilot script, Russell's brilliant episode 1, and there were lots of conversations. But also what Russell was very keen on is let's try things. Nobody's done this before. We don't know where it's going to be. So it can go over here. Can it do that type of episode? Can it be an emotional episode? Can we bring some form of Cyberman, Cyberwoman in? I mean, is it bringing back happy memories or tortured memories, Mark, when you think of this era when they basically had Doctor Who back, they'd launched it and been successful, and then they needed a spin-off quite early doors, and then it's their idea, and then this is the... And I don't know if it set the template, Mark, where this is where you can really experiment. And when we got RTD2 back with Doctor Who, he thought, I'll experiment with Doctor Who now. Because Torchwood, look at it, he's just saying, make it emotional, have a Cyberwoman, do this, do that. Let's just explore.
I said genius. And you might be bright and hot, but genius? Oh, honey, I don't think so.
I mean, I recently, well, I say recently, maybe about 18 months ago, I revisited Torchwood, and I just thought to myself, this hasn't really lasted very well, 20 years down the line. It came across as very cheesy, very tacky with the characters. I couldn't get beyond series 3 even. I gave up at that point. I mean, at the time, I guess they were trying to establish a strong foothold for Doctor Who, like by commissioning a spin-off. But whether it stands the test of time, I really can't say that it does. And I can only assume that what Russell T Davies was trying to do with The War Between the Land and the Sea was probably what he would have wanted to do back in the day had he done it all over again. He was basically trying to make Unit the Torchwood spin-off for the Disney franchise. There are the odd episodes. I mean, you mentioned Adrift there. I mean, that was quite a startling, shocking episode to watch. I think it had something about it, but the Captain Jack thing, I just found a bit too. I couldn't really be invested with John Barrowman's character, unfortunately. So because of that, I do have some distance with Torchwood.
You gotta be kidding me. Now I'm offended.
It was an interesting invention, Captain Jack's character, Jordan, because he never could die. You know this, he never dies.
Yeah.
He kind of dies and then he's back again. And of course, I think this is where we got into a mess with Bi-Generation, this whole idea that RTD has that there's no jeopardy. You had a Torchwood series where the main character can't die. It's like, I don't know, that's too far for me. I thought that was a little bit silly. We all need to kind of engage with the main character, obviously, and like them, hopefully, and know that they are mortal to a degree. Even the Doctor is mortal. I don't know. I just thought they went too far with that Captain Jack, really.
To be fair, it was never really an issue for me. I love Torchwood. I rewatch it every year. think series 1 was a bit of a mess when they were still trying to find the feet, but series 2 and 3 are brilliant.
Do you know what, Jordan? Look what you're saying there. This is what worries me, and everybody keep with us, because when we hit the Doctor Who quotes, it's interesting what he says. Because he kind of says they learn as they go. Now, we all know from the Chris Eccleston era, don't we, Jordan, that there was trouble at Mill. There was trouble regarding it all coming together or not, and it was a very stressful time, as they were learning how to do the CGI, learn to do science fiction in British drama at that point. Now, this is the problem with this, isn't it, Jordan? They didn't know what they were doing, but they still got the gig. And so when it got to Torchwood, he gets the gig, but they still don't know what they're doing. They're experimenting, exploring. And then, as he says in the quotes, we finally got there in season 3. And you're going, hold on a minute. It's somebody else's money you're spending, you know. Surely it's all locked down. It's all planned. It's all thoroughly checked out before you actually commit anybody's blank check to being spent.
Series 1's very tonally inconsistent. It's like they've got these new adult format, but they didn't really know what to go with it, so they're just sort of putting in more sex and swearing, whereas later on they sort of use the adult format to tell darker stories like Children of Earth, which worked a lot better.
Well, you've just mentioned that one. I remember it well, Christian, the Cyber Woman.
Yep. I tend to agree with Jordan on this. I think they did have a problem with tonal inconsistency when they started. The one element that does not age well is what I call the hypersexuality of the show as they generated it, because you can have a very adult-oriented show without it being hypersexualized, but they didn't seem to have the capacity to move away from that. They actually distanced themselves from it by the time they got to the Children of Earth, which was probably the strongest narrative for that story. But this goes back to what you pointed out. They needed to hit the ground with a very firm template. This is the format. These are the stories. This is where the first season is going to end. We want something concrete, and we want something that will allow for continuation if that's what the studio wants us to do. But they were spending their time trying to find a way. And, you know, the Cyber Woman story did not, it was an interesting idea, but I'm not sure it was executed effectively. And of course, the relationship between Captain Jack and his companion changed the tenor after that in retrospect anyway. So I don't know. I had problems with it, and I think, as Marcus said, it's not aging well, and that's unfortunate, because I think as a format, as a story idea, it had a lot of potential if it was done properly.
Yeah. As he said about this era, it could be anything. So let's try all these things, and some of those worked better than others, and then it refined in the second season, and then again, you know, had a kind of amazing evolution with Children of Earth. But it was very clear that you were doing stuff in that show that you couldn't do with Doctor Who. And I think this is it. You know, you get one hit of these things. If I was trying to make a pitch for a program, number one, nobody would listen to me. Number two, I'd have to probably go independent and commit my own money and probably really face a really difficult trajectory to get anywhere. Meanwhile, these are just spending other people's money, learning as they go, some sort of strange apprenticeship. Lucky little devils, I will say. My God.
Well, just picking up what you said previously, Brendan, about how it's frightening when you're talking about a production, they're going into something where they're making it up as they go along, and it's almost as if they have a blank check. They've recently published on Netflix, it's the documentary behind the making of the final series of Stranger Things with the Duffer Brothers, how they finished off that final series. And it was interesting, a point that many people picked up on with that behind the scenes documentary, is it didn't really do them any favors, because at the very start of that documentary, they sat round in their writers' boardroom saying, we're in production now and we still don't know how the series is going to end. And when you're thinking about how much money and production value goes into something like Stranger Things, that is a really, I would not like to be in that position of, I've got a big set of expectations on my shoulders and I don't have a final product. That's quite scary to think that a high production value product like Stranger Things can do something like that. And I think it went so far as some of the people who had watched that had taken screenshots where there was a suggestion that even the Duffer Brothers had had ChatGPT open in their script writing sessions. So it's quite scary if that can happen with Stranger Things. If we have a sense that might happen with Doctor Who, how many other productions do work on that premise?
Well, we know that. I mean, even the great RTD1 era, we know from the writer's tale that he actually acknowledged that he hadn't considered how to resolve everything. The four knocks, for example, he invented the four knocks clue, but he didn't know how he was going to deliver it. At that point, I think he's a man on top of his game, and he imaginatively did it, and I thought did it very well. I think it was brilliant to have just one man in one cubicle. I think that really worked. But I think it is high risk, Mark, to do that. And so, yeah, in our second show, we will talk about, the Chris Chibnall era and what he said about Doctor Who, his legacy, what he learned, what he was trying to do with the program. So, yeah, he did say he had a plan. So tune in again, everybody. And the same four will be here and we'll be discussing it as only you can expect Doctor Who fans to do. See you, everyone.